our guest today. We're very honored to have His Grace Bishop Thomas from Egypt. He's an old friend of the Center for Religious Freedom, and for many of you here in the audience, His Grace was the recipient of the Center's Religious Freedom Award in 1999. And we have been very active in reporting on religious freedom issues in Egypt over the years. The Egypt's Coptic Christians, of course, are not only the largest Christian community in the Middle East, but they are the largest non-Muslim religious minority in the Middle East. And so this is an ancient church, an apostolic church, one of the 5 original ones, and it's probably the one that's doing the best outside of Rome. His Grace is Bishop of El-Qusayya and Mayor Diocese in Upper Egypt. This is a heavily Christian part of Egypt. About 30% of the population there are Christian. He became a monk in 1983 and was ordained a priest in 1987. And Bishop Thomas works tirelessly to strengthen religious freedom and human rights in the face of personal risk. He was the first recipient of the St. Stephen Prize, a human rights award by the Norwegian Mission to the East, for his efforts to speak out against the oppression of religious communities. Bishop Thomas is active in building schools and developing educational programs within Egypt's Coptic Church. In 1999, he built the Anaphora Farm and Retreat Center just north of Cairo, where many of the monastic communities of the Desert Fathers lived for 1,500 years ago. He is not only interested in preserving, he's acutely aware of the patrimony of the ancient church in Egypt and is trying to preserve it, the art and culture of that community, but he is also working very hard to revitalize and to keep flourishing and invigorate the Christian community in Egypt today. There was an article that you may have seen in the Washington Post just last Sunday entitled, "Egypt's Coptic Christians Avoid Hardline Muslims. They Withdraw from Pressure," by Islamic fundamentalists. And it goes on to make the point that attacks this summer on monks and shopkeepers belonging to the Egypt's Coptic Christian minority and scattered clashes between Muslims and Christians have compelled many of the Copts in Egypt to isolate themselves within their nation. So we're very privileged to have Bishop Thomas with us today. He's going to address some of his concerns and some of these issues and talk generally about the situation in the Middle East and in Egypt. And so please join me in giving him a very warm welcome.
Thank you very much for this invitation and for the introduction, and I really thank the Institute for doing all the effort for awareness and justice for everyone. Just when someone would hear the word Copts, it doesn't ring a big bell for many ears, or sometimes they don't know what is this Copts, who are they, and why they are called Copts. And that's why I felt like it's worth it to start with explaining why we are called Copts. And the explanation, it might tell you a little bit of the dilemma that we have. Egypt has been always Egyptos. And everybody knew Egypt as Egyptos. And in the 7th century, there was a shift of the name and the country. When the Arabs came to Egypt, or rather say, invaded Egypt, they could not pronounce Egyptos, so because of the linguistic differences, so they pronounce it Gept. So they took away the A and the Os. So Egyptos became Gept. And when they wrote it with a Ka, so it became Copt. The whole country was the Copts. But then gradually, when some people, for certain reasons, whether it is taxation or pressure in any kind, or ambitious for dealing with the leaders or the governors of the country, they converted. Those who convert, they were not anymore Copts. They became something else. And those who remained Christians, they are the ones who were called the Copts. And here I will stop and put a question mark. What makes a person will change identity of his own nation and shift from focus his identity on Egypt, and they become the Arabs, even though ethnically they are the same persons, they are the same people, but no more Copts. And that's a big question mark, and that's a big reason for what is happening now. The Copts has been always focusing on Egypt. It's our identity, it's our nation, it's our land, it's our language, it's our culture. But when some of the Egyptians has converted to Islam, their focus has changed from looking into their own. They start to look to the Arabia. And the Arabia became the main focus. And instead of looking to where they are, they start to look elsewhere. So the focus here has changed. And they would never be called anymore Copts. And that's a big shift. And this is actually a very important reason of what is happening now. Are they really Copts, or are they really became Arabs? And that's why it leaves a big question mark here. If you come to a Coptic person and telling him that he is an Arab, that's an offend anyway. We are not Arabs, we are Egyptian, and I'm very happy to be an Egyptian, and I would not accept being Arab. Because ethnically, I am not. Second, I speak Arabic. Politically now, I'm part of a country that was Arabized, and then politically it is belonging to the Arabic country, but that doesn't make a person Arab. But that is not the same situation with another fellow citizen who live in Egypt, but not a Copt, with the same meaning of a Copt that I explained. But the main whole thing became something different. He is, by identity, he considers himself or herself an Arab. So the main focus is the pan-Arab area. And that means that shifting the nation, the identity of his or her nationality, to the Arabic wide spread area. And that means that if you are not belonging to the same group, that means that where are you placed within the Arabic community. You are in and out. You are belonging and you don't. And this is a big dilemma that is happening between the Copts who kept their Christianity, but rather said that they kept their identity as Egyptian with their own culture, trying to keep the language, trying to keep the music, try to keep the calendar of the Copts. And that means the cultural issue of the old Egyptian is still carried on. Meanwhile, our fellow citizens, they dropped it for another culture. And that means a process of Arabization has been ongoing in this country for many centuries, since the 7th century. We would say as well that this is part of a dilemma, but at the same time, Islamization as well is also another dilemma that is started as well, which is still carrying a lot of the problem till now. So when we hear the word Copts, that doesn't mean only Christians. It is an Egyptian, this is the literal word, Egyptian. But what makes an Egyptian becomes a Copt, and an Egyptian doesn't become a Copt? Simply, this is the shift that happened in Egypt since the Arabic invasion to Egypt. And now when you look at a Copt, you don't see only a Christian. You see an Egyptian who is trying to keep his identity versus another imported identity that is working on him. And that means if these two processes is still actively working till now, it's never stopped, because simply Egypt was not yet in their own mind completely Islamized or Arabized. That means the process still has to go on, and it is working on. Simply, if you want to study Coptic language, like any other language, you are allowed to teach it at school. You can teach English, French, German, any language, but you can't study Coptic language, the native language of the land, in any public school in Egypt. That's not allowed. Although we can teach in our public schools any other languages. We have a lot of schools that teach the English and French and German and Spanish and Greek and a lot of languages, but never Coptic. And why? Because that simply clashes with the process of Arabization. And this is very dangerous attitude that the cultural heritage of Egypt has been taken away. And this is something that it doesn't carry anything with religions, but it carries something with the reality of the culture, that it is dying, and the Copts suddenly felt that they have a responsibility to carry on their own culture and continue with it and to fight for it. Yes, we're still fighting very much for our strong heritage of Egypt, because we love our heritage and we want to keep it. And that means that if you try to teach your language in a public school, that would not be the right way to do it. So that means that the church will carry the responsibility to take this heritage in and work with it, keeping it in a very good nursery till the time would come that when openness and good thinking would occur, then this country will come back to its own roots and lift it up. But until then, we have to keep it in a nursery, in a church. So we don't want to keep it in. We don't want to isolate it in, but we cannot throw it away so nobody will take care of it. So that's why we keep it. So if you see that this is withdrawal, but then this is not withdrawal, but we could say that this is keeping the heritage in a nursery till the time comes that it will be open and serve all the Egyptian community. So the word Copts here is not only religion, but it is cultural input. The process of Arabization is still working on, and it is not only with language, but with different cultures. It's with calendar, with traditions, with way of art. But we feel actually a little bit betrayed with our fellow brothers and sisters in this nation, that suddenly our own culture, our own art has been taken away, and this art is labeled in another label. So suddenly, for example, the woodwork that has been always a handcraft of the Egyptians, suddenly it has been taken away from being an Egyptian handcraft to become an Islamic art, simply because one person or a group of people or a million of people has converted to become Islamic. That doesn't take away the fact that this art has been always an Egyptian handcraft art, but suddenly it was converted to become an Islamic art. And that means that the Egyptian will look at themselves and say, where this art came from? Is it an Islamic art? And we know that the Arabia at that time didn't have any wood handcrafts with the same style, because it was a desert, and this desert doesn't have this much forest that will help this kind of things. And that means that suddenly my culture has been stolen and been labeled in another way, and this is, I think, historical forcing, which is still active. This, if we talk about the cultures for hours and hours, we could give many examples. But let's shift now to the Islamization process, and that means that the nowadays situation is still an ongoing process. And Islamization here, it doesn't have to be just pushing people to convert, but there are many things that it could take a slight direction when all the media will just take this direction. And when you sit all the time in your school since you were young, and to hear always that Islam is the right way to live, and where our young kids as small minorities has to live with this fact that they will hear and been educated in a completely different way than what they have been educated in their churches. And that means that a little kid, imagine if you were a small little kid and you go to school and hear something, and then you go back home and hear another thing, and then you have to memorize verses from the Quran where you will go to your school and your exams and write it. exactly what they have been telling you. It's verses. So do I have, as a little kid, to study the Quran to pass my exams? But kids are growing up with this kind of direction. And that means when you study history, you have to study the history of the victorious Islamic invaders. And that means, as a little kid, you have to praise the Arabic troops that came to your country and how that makes your feelings. And meanwhile, you have very little studies in your history about the old Pharaonic time. And you have very little studies about your heritage being a Copt. And you have very little studies about the everyday life of a nation. But most of the things that you have to study this direction. So we grew up, which I am part of it. I grew up memorizing the Quran, memorizing a lot of the hadith, hearing the stories of the history, how the Islamic troops were victorious. And we have to study that, and we have to write it in our exams, and we have to embrace it and praise it. And that's, of course, it leaves very little justice in the heart of people. And that means that nowadays media has the same style, and you could always sit wherever you are and you hear Quranic reciting, and you cannot say stop. It shouts everywhere, and this is part of the pressure that people are living in. We are not telling them don't pray, but you don't have to make it for everyone that who is in the streets and in his home and in his bedroom to hear all this without stop. And this is part of the pressure. And with the growing fundamentalism in Egypt, Egypt entered into a very difficult time where the integration of the Copts and Muslims, and here I use the same words, or I use the same connotations that they are using, which I feel personally I would have loved to use the Christians and Muslims or the Egyptians. But anyway, this is the message that everyone has been given when we were talking about the Muslims and the Serbians, or we were talking about the Copts and the Muslims, and we were talking about this is how they were portraying the Muslims is one group wherever they are, and then the countries they can change whatever you can see. So this is where we learn how to do it, although it's not really logical. But the Copts has to live this way, and we have to learn how to hear sometimes in the media some people who are attacking Christianity, and we have to take it. And sometimes we have some writers who will dare to write on these issues, but they never in the public media, in the official newspaper. They have to go to Christian newspapers to write what they wanted, but not in the same place where these publications has been issued. We hope, of course, for better relationship, but actually the fundamentalism that started in the 70s all the leaders now is a product of this. So when we face some injustice, we say that this is a behavior of a product of fundamentalism, where we should learn about it, but at the same time, this is not what it should be. We take a few examples, what you just have read here, and I will take the example that was written and published in the newspapers, so we'll not take other examples. So what was written in the newspapers and what has been published was the attack of some groups against a monastery in Malawi, Abu Fana Monastery. And what is this? 7 monks has been taken in hostage, been tortured, and as it was broadcasted in some of in the media, in the Egyptian media, some of these monks said that they tried very hard with them to spit on the cross and to convert to Islam. Of course, the monks would not do that. They didn't. But the point here, when these monks talked about it in the media with an interview, and then, what is the reaction that anyone could have? The reaction here, we are taking away this religious concept, and we are putting the situation as a conflict, a dispute over land. So we leave the main issue and take a side issue, a dispute over land. And the dispute over land became the big thing, and monks have been taken in hostages, tortured the whole night, beaten, asking them to spit over the cross, is not been taken into consideration. And that makes the situation feels like, what is what here? This is the image and reality. Egypt now is falling between two things. Is it the reality that we need to face and work on it, or is it the image that we should put to the world? And I feel like, as a real Egyptian, that I love my country, I want my country to deal with the reality, not with the image that we wanted to declare. It's okay that some group will act in an unwise, unjust way, but the biggest problem that the majority of people would not act in an unjust way and take the focus somewhere else. The point is not what happened, the point is how did we deal with it. And this is what we here try to say, that it's much better to deal with reality than the image. And anyway, it has been a lot of stories how when we deal with the issue of Arabism and Islamism, we deal with image, not with reality. And that makes the situation much more different and difficult to deal with, because when we deal with images, then we put a mask, and when we put the mask, we can't deal with solutions. And this is the situations that we are dealing with it. And then this would be repeated day by day in many incidents, in many happenings, in different levels. And that's why I want to tell you, when we go and visit Egypt and you walk in the streets, you will not see differences, much differences between people there, Christians and Muslims. You can just go to a public place and you can see them walking in and out. It's the surface level where people would meet each other, where people will just be nice to each other in the streets and in public places and in schools. But then as soon as something happens and it goes deeper in another layer, then things will start to become different. And then you go another deeper level, and if these things will come and happen to your neighbor, that becomes a different situation. And when these things happen and become against you and your family, that becomes something different. And here we have different levels and different layers. Just one other story that to tell you with these levels what happened. Another story that was published as well in the newspapers. I'm not saying anything that's not published anyway. So, and this story that happened in El Fayoum, that it was a young girl who converted some time ago to Islam and married a man and lived with him. And then suddenly she ran away from this man. Whatever the reason is, it's a story that was published. What would be a normal reaction for normal human beings? This girl will go to the court if she wants to divorce her husband, or this woman would go to seek psychological advisors or social advisors. Just would go back to her family to seek refuge and help. But because this girl was a Christian, she converted. When the rumors came that this girl would return back to her village, suddenly there was an attack to all the Christian villagers in this village. Just simply because a rumor came that this girl will come back to this village. So the villagers has to pay the price. Houses were destroyed. Shops were robbed. And the story will not stop. Unfortunately, the girl was not there. Police has to search for the girl till they found her. Take her back to her husband, where she has to live with him the rest of her life. I don't know according to what well she has to live there. This is a glimpse of what is happening. And now, what do you expect a Coptic person who lives under this atmosphere? What do you think would be the reaction? Do I have to protect myself and protect my family? Do I have to open up and go and seek communication with others? I would tell you, we are not a weak church. We are not weak people. We are strong people, and we will survive. And we are the love in us. The love is much stronger than hatred. And with this love, we can continue and go and work and be integrated in this society and work for the goodness of this society and try to reach out for our fellow brothers and sisters who live in this country. And if the fundamentalists or those who are spoiling the minds of people would not like it, we have to work for it. And we have to find some of the moderates and work with them. And we still have some moderate writers. Very, very, very few, but still there is one or two who still can say the truth. But the majority would go for the stereotype propaganda of what the majority wants. And this is what we want to say, that even though we are facing a lot of hardship, but still we are not weak, because simply truth is strong, love is strong. Hope is strong. And that makes the Christians in Egypt will continue. And even though we have a lot of immigration that is happening and coming to this country, but still we are a little worried about the big number of immigrants that's leaving Egypt, like all the Middle East, that the Christians are leaving this area. And this is a big question mark. This is a big cry for help to let the Christians be helped staying in their own country. Thank you very much. I took longer of your time, but I'm very happy to be with you here. Thank you very much.
Bishop Thomas has graciously offered to answer some questions. So if anyone has questions, please ask them now. Please raise your hand and identify yourself and try to keep the question contained. Yes, sir. Oh, we have a microphone here since this is being recorded. Wait, can you just hold on 1 second?
Magdi Khalil, Middle East Freedom Forum. I just comment about Washington Post. Copts isolated by the Egyptian regime from 1952, and from 1970s they faced the Islamic fundamentalism. The same people killed Americans in 9/11. In 1963, Professor Edward Wacken from New York University wrote a book named A Lonely Minority. The conclusion of the book that the Copts in Egypt isolated by the Egyptian regime from 1963. So I wrote to Washington Post, and I hope they publish. What I want to see the conclusion of the speech about definition of persecution. I wrote a paper in Arabic about definition of persecution. According all definitions, the Copts in Egypt persecuted. We want to say this message: the Copts in Egypt persecuted. They're not only under discrimination, but also under persecution. According also Roma Statute of the International Criminal Court in 1998 and the International Criminal Court of Rwanda, and all crimes against human rights are crimes against humanity. So the Copts in Egypt are persecuted. Thank you.
That was more of a comment than a question. Thank you for your comment.
Ali Aliami.
Ali Aliami from the Center for Democracy and Human Rights in Saudi Arabia, here in Washington, not in Saudi Arabia. Nina, I want to thank you for what you do, not just for the Copts, but for minorities all over the world. I really, there was a conference in Madrid recently, where I guess the Copts were not invited. I would like for you to comment on actually the exclusion of the Copts and the fact that there are so many Americans here praising King Abdullah for conducting this conference to promote understanding between Christians and Muslims, or non-Muslims and Muslims. Obviously the Copts slipped through the crack. You are not part of that group. The other question is, we in this country pay Mubarak and his crowds about $2 billion a year. The Saudis, we also protect the Saudi royal family who support the Muslim brothers. There are many Americans actually who are encouraging the United States government to recognize and to enter into the discussions and support for the Muslim brothers. What does that do to the rest of... I learned a lot by your description about the Copts and how I never knew this before. Thank you for that, actually.
Thank you.
But I would like you to comment to this Madrid conference where the Copts and others... I'm from Saudi Arabia. The Saudis are divided. The Saudi minorities are not included in this conference at all. That's one thing. The other thing is, why does the United States, that promotes democracies all over the world, keep supporting a system that oppress 12 million people, the Copts? How many?
Yeah.
And many others too. Thank you.
The first thing about Madrid conference, why we are not invited, I don't know exactly, but when you know the depth of something and you just want to take the image and not reality, you should not invite something who knows you from the depth. And that's obvious. If you would just say something and you just want to give a certain image, and someone there would tell you, oh no, you're not doing that, you're not saying that, this is not written, and then it will not become a nice fellow to invite anyway. So maybe that's why the Copts were not invited, but I would have loved to be invited, and would love to share in this kind of things, because I believe that any real dialogue has to be based on reality and frankness, not on masks and lipsticks. And I feel like this is very important message. The second one, why the American regime is supporting the Muslim Brotherhood. I don't know about that, but I'm not sure. I cannot talk in this matter, but I know that there are some American organizations, maybe they are supported by government or not, I don't know, but I know that there are American organizations that they are in touch with Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt and supporting them. But the reality is politics needs to keep arms everywhere, and maybe they think that the Muslim Brotherhood will take over Egypt. That's why they want to keep a channel with them. But we know, as we are living in this area and this context, that this organization, the Muslim Brotherhood, they have an agenda to take over not only Egypt, but other side of the places, other countries as well. And that would be very much difficult. It's already difficult now, but it would be even much worse for Egypt to impress this organization as leaders in the country. But the problem, actually, in my point of view, it is an atmosphere that we live in. It's not a small organization or a big organization. It's a generation that has been taught in a certain way, in certain ethics, and certain philosophy that is not accepting the others. And this generation, it's a whole generation, and this whole generation, they are leading and they are infiltrating everywhere. And that's what we need to do, is not only to deal with an organization like the Muslim Brotherhood, but to deal with a whole generation that they are infiltrated. And I think we have imported a lot from Saudi Arabia. The Wahhabis meetings and philosophy has been very much influential in Egypt. And with the money that comes from the oil, we see in Egypt every day a lot of this process that's happening. We feel worried, but we are not forsaken. We feel troubled, but we are not crushed. And this is a very important message, that we will stand up for ourselves, and we will continue, and the Copts will never cease to end and to cease to exist in Egypt. It's our country, and we will always be there. So regimes will come and go, and philosophies will come and go, but people will always be there.
And in the middle there, on the right.
Hi, I'm I'm Samantha Grayson of the Center for Global Prosperity here at Hudson Institute. Thank you for your comments. We're writing a piece on Coptic orphans for our annual Index of Global Philanthropy. I was wondering if Coptic orphans are even further marginalized in Egypt and if that's an area that the Coptic Church focuses on. Thank you.
The church is doing a lot of the social activities because starting from school, medical care, social care, and the church has to carry on this burden on because we don't see people have been taken care of, so we have to carry our orphans, and we do. There are a lot of orphanages around in Egypt, and it has been taken care of. And anyway, the Copts in general, they are very generous people. So and because of their feeling of solidarity and spirituality, they feel that they can generously give, especially to the poor and to the orphans. And we can say like the churches has to carry on educational responsibility, not only religious education in the school, in the Sunday school in the churches, but the church started to do a lot of schools, public, normal private schools, to take care of their own. We know that at the time of Nasser, all the Coptic schools has been shut down, but then we are starting again, and we take responsibility of our people. Beside the development programs that we are doing everywhere, so that's one side that the church is taking care of. Not only that spiritual liturgical services, but this is a big part of our people. And I think a lot of our young people are very much involved in the church simply because of the responsibility that has been given to them in taking care of the poor ones and the needy ones. Egypt is a poor country, yes, but it is not a poor country in this way. There is a big gap between rich and poor, and here we see that a lot of the Copts would lay in the very poor areas.
Any other questions? Okay, front row here.
Hi, I'm Nader Tadros, and I'm a Copt too. And I have a question for Bishop Thomas. And now that I think the trend in the church is to provide services, a lot of services to people, to the church goers and to the Christians. And sometimes they tell them that now they don't depend much on the state. The state is not going to help you with housing. The state is not going to help you with jobs. And maybe we can help you with that as a church. And down the road, I see some hazards, some dangers. And the danger is that there is more isolation. But not only that, there is this message to the Copts: you don't need to claim your rights with the state, which is very dangerous. So we take away our Egyptian-ness, kind of. And I'm a little worried about this trend. And I don't know how you see what's the way to deal with that, too.
Thank you.
And I understand the difficulty. It's not, I am a Copt myself, and I understand the difficulty that, a lot of Copts are facing these days, too.
There is two levels here that we need to deal with. One is the long-term level, where the Copts has to demand the rights, and this is a very important education that we need to do, and we are doing it. And this it's not only one-sided action. it has also to meet with another process that the majority in Egypt are doing. So it goes both ways. The Copts will continue to demand their rights, and at the same time, it should be a willingness from the authorities and the majorities in different levels, wherever they are, to allow and to give justice and rights for those who are demanding it. So it goes both ways, and this is a long way to go, and we're still on the beginning of this road, and I see that this is something that it will continue to take its time, where I don't think the Copts will enjoy it that fast. The second level of it, it's the now. It's the immediate needs of a person who is in need now. Do I think I would just ask this person and say to him, go and be treated in a hospital, that they will not give you your rights? Or I just will carry this wounded person and take care of him? For me, I would feel very bad conscience if I will let this person down. I have to carry this person, whatever it happens. And this is what is happening right now, that the church has to fill in the needs for people if they will be left down. And I think this is, it should be a credit to the church, not a discredit for it.
In the back of the room there.
Emily Norris with OSD Policy. I recently just returned from Egypt myself, and my question concerns the place of the Copts within the political system, and what sort of voice do they have? How are they working within the existing political parties within Egypt? For those who don't know, it's kind of basically a one-party system in a lot of ways, and I'm wondering, have the Copts tried to work within that system? Do they have their own political parties? Do they work within other secular parties? And how effective has their voice been, or ineffective?
Unfortunately, we have a big dilemma here, and we're still trying to build up a pressure group, or being involved in different level. And I think that the system that is there now, that the national party, which is the majority, or the dominant, the only dominant, or whatever you may say, that they nominate their candidates. And unfortunately, the Copts are applying there several times, and I know that in my area I have people that they applied several times, and they have not been nominated, and that means who runs the elections, not one of the Copts there. And that ends that after elections, of course there is no Copts in these elections, that the president generously will appoint few parliament members as a representative, or a kind of a show to the public that there are some Copts who are there. And here I have some comments that I would say, like, is it a gift or right? Is our involvement, being part of the parliament, is a gift of a generous giver, or is it a right of a full citizen who has the right to be part of the decision making of his own country? Until we reach to the second part, this is still a long way to go, and till now the Copts are kindly welcoming the generosity of the president appointing 2 or 3 persons in the parliament of 444 persons. And that leaves the situation in a very hard way, that an appointed member of the parliament is not like an elected parliament member. And it's a big difference. What we are hoping for still, that the right that the Copts will be nominated from their parties to run elections as normal and to gain their presence in the parliament at their own right, not as a gift. There is a big difference between receiving a generous gift and taking your right. It is my right, not a gift. And that means that I have always to wait for this generous giver for all the other things, like permitting a church to be built. It's a generous gift, not as a right, and I want it to be my right. This, like that, political parties, building churches, repairing churches, educational system, promoting in higher positions in different places, in different ranks in the government. It's all, is it a gift or a right? And what we are now, it's a gift. And we want to shift from the gift to the right.
Okay, we'll take 2 more questions then. One here.
Miriam Mendelson. I'm a research intern here at Hudson. 2 quick questions, Bishop Thomas. You referred to, when you were speaking about the religious and geographic encroachment on the original Egyptians, the Copts, you used both the terms Arabization and Islamization. And I'm wondering to what degree you can distinguish, and in what way might you distinguish between the two. And then the second question is, when I was doing research myself in Egypt really a short time ago and spoke with different people within the society, religious leaders, political leaders, people just run-of-the-mill academics, etc., and I asked them about extremism within the society, I could see the influence of the Muslim Brotherhood in the society, and whether people called it the influence of the Muslim Brotherhood or whether they called it the greater religiosity. But everybody almost across the board denied the existence of any significant amount of extremism within Egyptian society currently, and I wanted to know your take on that as well. Thank you very, very much.
That depends on what is how you define extremism. Yeah, it's okay. And of course, if someone is in the extreme side of the situation, would never look at the person next to him as an extreme. You see what I mean here? If we would divide the modernism and extremism, if I am in the side of extremism, I would never look at the person next to me as an extreme. I would look at this person as a normal person. And that your comment is making me feel more worried that a vast majority of the people would never see themselves as acting as an extremist. And that means that the concept of accepting the others and allowing them to exist and to defend the right of the others is not in the philosophy of these people. Violence here is not just shooting someone, although it exists. We just had some of them. But violence is much more than shooting and shedding blood. The dignity of the people, when it's violated, it kills them. And I see that it is happening in a wide scale. The point here, if I would feel that when this story of attacking the monastery happens, and I would see that a demonstration from a Muslim group would stand up for the rights of the civilians and demonstrate to stop the violence and to create justice, then I would say this is moderate, proactive society. But if I would see that no one, but on the contrary, trying to bring an excuse of what happened and claim that this is dispute of a land, that means justifying what happens, is not a moderate group. In Egypt now, they are connected totally because Egypt has been Arabized since many centuries now. But the point here, still, the very little Egyptian heritage that we still carry is still a threat. Because when I'm not allowed to teach my language, this is a threat to totally make it dead. When I'm not allowed to present my music for the public Egyptian, for the normal Egyptian outside of the church, in the public TV, that makes everyone in Egypt would understand what is this music that belongs to their heritage in the old pharaonic time. That is also a threat for the heritage that we carry. I'm very happy, I'm proud of being a member of the church that carries this heritage and keep it in a nursery. But I don't want to carry it all the time. I am waiting for the moment that I will open it and show it to everyone who is Egyptian. And I'm very much waiting for this time that people would understand this is their heritage and needs to be claim it. Not only just follow the Arabic culture. With respect to Arabic culture, we are not against it, but at the same time, give a space for your own.
Okay, one last question. I think there was one over here.
Hi, thank you for...
Yes, it works.
Okay. Thank you for coming. Mario Youssef from the State Department. My question was, looking around the room, there are a lot of Egyptian Christians who left, who are in the diaspora now. And my question is, what does the church, and you specifically, think we could do to better things from here?
Understanding, creating awareness of what's happening, and I feel like people need to learn how to document things, and in Egypt we are not able to carry this responsibility so far because we are living in a society that this is our education, this is our level of dealing with situations. We are a product of this society. I am a product of this society. I don't know how to document things, and I don't know how to deal with things, and I'm very poor in this situations. But if you are able to document what is happening, to register it somehow, and when we see situation, how to present it to the international community, not in an emotional way, but in a very strategic, intelligent way, that without condemning others, hurting others, we are not willing to hurt anyone. We don't want to disgrace anyone, but simply we want justice. Simply what we are looking for is fair treatment, our rights as a normal human beings, as a normal citizen, and this is what we are up to. We are not against other people. People have the right to believe what they wanted. People have the right to follow whatever philosophy that they want or whatever religion and what they want. We don't have to search for these things. But I only care for if I live in a country and I live with a group of people, I wanted these people to respect me as I respect them, and to take my rights as they are taking theirs. And that's why also the people who are in the diaspora, they need to learn as well how to tackle these situations in a wise, intelligent way. And this is my message, and I'm here just to visit my friends, and I just want to tell you that I want to encourage everyone. We are in Egypt, even though we face lots of problems, but still here I am. And after 100 years, you will find another person who will come and stand here as well and say the same thing. I hope we'll do the same thing, but would be an improvement. But this would happen, and the church will continue, and the Copts will continue, even though nowadays we have a lot of immigrants that they are leaving Egypt and come to the West. But no matter, they are needed wherever they are, but we are where we are, and we stand firm in our roots. And I want to tell you something. When you have good roots, strong roots, and you are faithful in these roots, you will be able to open up like a tree and open your arms and embrace everyone. Good people will open up their arms and embrace righteousness and defend and stand firm for the rights of others if they have good roots. I think, personally, if I have to be proud of something, I would be proud of my roots. That is strong. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank Bishop Thomas for his great depth of understanding and his insights into the big picture of Coptic life in Egypt today. As you can see, he is a great teacher and has a tremendous pastoral presence. I am very disturbed by the polarizing situation of the ongoing process of cultural Arabization and Islamization to the exclusion of the Coptic culture. So I want to just thank him on behalf of the Center for Religious Freedom and Hudson Institute for his vibrancy in sharing with us his perspectives of the Coptic Church, and to thank him above all for championing religious pluralism and tolerance and freedom, and for his willingness to spend time with us today. I encourage you all to visit Egypt and to visit his retreat center in Anaphora, which is in northern Cairo and is open to all of us. And finally, the bishop made a reference, some of the audience made a reference to the highly intolerant teachings that are infiltrating Egypt. And I just want to point out that the Center for Religious Freedom has a new study on Saudi textbooks that we came out with this week, and it's available on our website at www.hudson.org/religion. The whole report is there, along with side-by-side translations. So thank you all for coming. Again, join me in thanking Bishop Thomas.